This is Health Unabashed on Healthcare Now Radio, a show unapologetically passionate about health and wellness innovations enabling sustainability, equity, and access with the patient or member at the table. Hosted by digital health advocate, author, and global thought leader Gil Bash, the show features thought-provoking people, ideas, and companies that are making a difference. I'm Greg Masters, the executive producer and co-host, and join Gil as we engage top industry talent sharing their insights and best practices to create sustainable change. On today's show, our guest is Ardy Arianpour, CEO and co-founder of SEQSTER, the leading healthcare technology company that puts the patient at the center of all their health data. Ardy is a visionary health tech executive with 20-plus years driving innovation in biotech, life sciences, and digital health. Prior to starting SEQSTER, Ardy launched several clinical and consumer-based genetic tests as Chief Commercial Officer of Pathway Genomics and served as Senior Vice President of Ambry Genetics, which sold to Konica in 2017 for $1 billion. As a key player in the 2013 landmark SCOTUS decision scrapping gene patents, Ardy played an instrumental role in expanding genetic testing with the launch of BRCA testing benefiting patients and family members across the country. Ardy received his Bachelor of Science in Biological Sciences from the University of California, Irvine, and an MBA from the Marshall Goldsmith School of Management. He was a medical marketing and media's top 40 healthcare transformer and cited by the San Diego Business Journal in their 40 Under 40 publication. Ardy also serves on the Digital Health Advisory Board of UC San Diego and faculty for NextMed Health. And with that introduction, Gil, over to you.
Greg, I want to thank you yet again for a wonderful introduction and for all your support for Health Unabashed. Your serving as executive producer has really brought the show forward. I'm so thrilled that Healthcare Now Radio finds that the show is really one of its top programs, and it's a great reason why. We've got amazing guests. Today we have Ardy Arianpour as our special guest. Ardy and I had a magnificent time together seems like a few days ago. We were on the stage together in San Antonio at the American Telemedicine Association meeting. He was a featured speaker. I was happy to be the moderator of that session. And here I am again for you, moderating a wonderful conversation with Ardy. Ardy is the founder and CEO of SEQSTER. SEQSTER is I'll call it a breakthrough platform, a breakthrough health information platform that without any doubt has the potential to save lives. We're going to explore what SEQSTER is all about. I'm going to talk about it a little bit from the point of view of a new customer on the platform, my own experience of getting on and what it's like to take all of my health information from a variety of different EMRs, bring it together, but more than that, actually can allow the information to find a natural nexus so that I can see patterns of information. I can see diagnostics from different institutions, BioReference, Quest, NYU Langone, in a simple snapshot and dashboard. It is really for us the ability to find at least household interoperability for information, despite the fact that our nation hasn't achieved it. Ardy, SEQSTER are making it happen. Ardy, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to the program.
Well, first off, thank you so much, Greg Masters and Gil Bash, for having me here. It was a pleasure getting to know you better, Gil, just a couple weeks ago at the San Antonio meeting, as you mentioned. And I can say that, I couldn't be more proud to be in your guys' presence and so grateful. Another San Diegan, Greg Masters. And Gil, your name speaks for itself in healthcare from the voice of not only for patients, but for innovation. And looking forward to conversation.
You're kind. And Ardy, you mentioned before while we were just warming up, it's shocking that the two of us have never spent time together. And now, of course, we're spending a lot more time together, thankfully. And we have a lot of mutual friends who have been on this program, like Dr. Amir Kalali, who also lives in San Diego with you and Greg. Obviously, each of you have your own home, but San Diego has really become a hub for health innovation and for people who are thinking about outside the box. So, I wanted to explore a little bit of your life, Ardy, because you're a highly successful serial entrepreneur. You have built health information platforms. Prior to this, you've had some very successful exits. And I wanted to explore why SEQSTER. Here you are, you're kind of in a place in your life where you can do pretty much whatever you want. You've come off a successful venture. You could go in and be a CEO of another venture. You chose to start something. When you left what you were doing, what went through your mind initially when your company was acquired for quite a bit of money? You walked out, you went home, maybe you and your wife had a celebratory cocktail, and then you woke up the next morning and said, SEQSTER. What? Now, it didn't happen that way, but what did happen?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think there's no coincidences in life, actually, Gil. I'm a perfect example of that. I'm a perfect example of the American dream being alive. And a lot of people out there think that it's not. I'm a perfect example of an immigrant to this country and the opportunity that America gives, entrepreneurs, go-getters to really change things. And I was very lucky being at the right place at the right time since the age of 16. My first job was at the Salk Institute for Biological Studies. I remember, Gil, when I was, parking in the dirt lot in Torrey Pines, and I would go walk up to the lab where I got a job in Dr. Ronald Evans' lab, which is probably one of the most prestigious labs in the world because Joannes Salk actually gave him that lab because he was a postdoc in Joannes Salk's lab when Joannes Salk died in the 90s. But more importantly, I would see Francis Crick with a Mercedes-Benz parked in the handicap space, but he'd get out and he would walk, 2 steps instead of me, a mile from where I parked. And
well, he was handicapped, Ardy. Cut him a break, all right?
Yeah, that's true. He had a handicap a sticker, and obviously he was probably at that time, I don't know, in his late 70s, I would guess. But his license plate said ATCG. And that was when I got really interested in really what DNA sequencing was. You fast forward, 18 years, I fell into DNA sequencing technologies in my teens, while people were working at Starbucks or at In-N-Out or McDonald's. And so that's where the career started. And then from there, I got into various different international business development opportunities, all involving genomics and DNA sequencing in the early 2000s, right after the genome was sequenced by Craig Venter and the NIH and Francis Collins and friends. And then, just being in San Diego, it was really the mecca of genomics. And so again, right place, right time. And everyone thinks about Silicon Valley or Boston for, biotech and tech. People forgot that San Diego was a killer town in the 90s, in the early 2000s for, genomic technologies and research and development. And so I came from that background and was able to work my way through a couple big companies. I didn't actually get involved into the first startup company until the age of 28. But then I took that company from, 19 employees to over 1,200, and it sold for $1 billion. And, after that, retired for 2 weeks, went crazy, and called my dad and said, I got to do something. I got to give something back. I felt so empty. And so I always had this idea of having all your health data in one place, obviously not to what it is that you have experienced, how much progress we put in place with SEQSTER now after 7.5 years of, the journey with SEQSTER has been incredible, right? I mean, we've had touch points with Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, you name it. These stories. We could try to talk about a little bit on this show, but really it was the perfect storm. If you go back to 2016, there was no tailwinds for 400 million wearables that were the data was being siloed.
And if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Health Unabashed on Healthcare Now Radio. Our guest is Ardy Arianpour, CEO and co-founder of SEQSTER, a visionary health tech executive with 20 plus years driving innovation in biotech, life sciences, and digital health. Prior to starting SEQSTER, Ardy launched several clinical and consumer-based genetic tests as Chief Commercial Officer of Pathway Genomics and served as Senior Vice President of Ambry Genetics, which sold to Konica in 2017 for $1 billion.
You know, you said something, Ardy, you said something to me on the stage at ATA, American Telemedicine Association, that, I've kept on thinking about that phrase. And you're going to know this the moment I say this, which is information is medicine. It's really so true. The looking at patterns, doctors make all their decisions off of information. And often they're reinventing the wheel in each instance. Someone comes in, an older American comes into the hospital. The sense of their EMR, the patient's EMR, is voluminous. They're often like scrolling through screens and so forth. And just for disclosure, I signed up to SEQSTER yesterday. I got online. It was very simple indeed. Passcode, so login, passcode, and then I started to integrate my different health records from different places. And let's face it, we go all sorts of places today for our medical care. Now we have like 5 or 6 EMRs we're associated. We're seeing this primary care doctor. They've got a platform. We go to a hospital system for like our ECG and our stress tests, and we got that platform. We got our colonoscopy platform. The GI who's doing, he has a platform or she has a platform. We're going to Quest 1 year for our blood test, and our insurance company switches, and we're off to LabCorp or BioReference or whatever. And all of our data is, well, it's just sitting there in the ether zone at all of these different places. And if you want your data from 5 years ago, you got to remember your passcode, your password, go find it. You look at that data, then you could look at this data. And I was just curious, thinking back to that doctor in the hospital, they only know the snippet from their hospital or their platform. And you created a system that allowed the person who has the most skin in the game, the patient or the caregiver, to integrate all their data and more. This is what I found fascinating from my visit to SEQSTER yesterday, was the ability to actually create dashboards. You want to look at your lipids over 3 different platforms, it will create a dashboard for you. You want to take a look at more important time-bound chronological data from all your health system data, it will do that for you. You want to take a look at a particular therapeutic condition that was of concern at a certain point, it will pull that data for you. Effectively, you've created this kind of organization and search engine on SEQSTER that I really haven't seen before. And I see a lot of stuff. So I wanted to, pretty good for 24 hours, right? I wanted to go back and explore with you, not SEQSTER, but the thinking process that you and your colleagues put in to saying, look, you have an ability to look at your separate EMRs. We're going to pull this together and we're going to make it so that the information becomes, well, the currency of your life, of your health life. Just don't talk to me about SEQSTER for a second. Tell me about almost like the engineering process of the thinking that went into, this is all the stuff we need to do. Who did you speak to? Who did you check in with? How did you come to these ideas?
And Gil, thank you for that. You explained it so well and you articulated it in such a short time. I'm hearing it for the first time that you tried it, which I'm actually surprised, but not, knowing your amazing medical and medic background, and you understand medicine better than most from a different perspective. And I think that's what's so important. Let me take a step back, Gil. So when you create something, you have to think differently. And again, like I said, sometimes things happen on accident. With SEQSTER, we're the only company to date, still, Gil, to put the patient at the center. We didn't have engineers create this, Gil. We didn't have, myself create it. Yes, I had a big vision idea and we put the team together, but we shouldn't get any of the credit. The patients and caregivers, those, couple thousand folks that were particularly women get the credits for creating SEQSTER, and that's the beauty of it. So instead of thinking payvider to payvider or payer to payer, peer to peer, provider to provider, or whatever that scenario might be, we put the patient at the center and in full control with full transparency of their data and full ownership of their data, and started there. If you think of your banking data, we took that same approach. Some people know the mint.com for, finances. That was one model we used. We said, oh my God, how can we make it as easy as, you signing up to Wells Fargo or Bank of America or Chase, seeing your spending accounts, seeing your AR and seeing your deposits and seeing, having, and then maybe some dashboards, that can go beyond this. What we didn't know is how hard of a problem interoperability was, because most of our folks on our team were bioinformaticians and geneticists, and we knew ATCG data very well because we built monumental companies, before in the past on that. So we took that same thinking with the women population of patients and caregivers and put together something that's never been done before. And people still didn't believe it until Dr. Eric Topol in 2018 tweeted that he brought all his data from 4 health systems from 1985 to present, plus his 23andMe data, which is his genetics data, plus his wearable data at the time, which was a Fitbit, and even, Gil, his nutrition data from MyFitnessPal. He said in less than 24 hours. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we can do that same scenario in 24 milliseconds. It's incredible what the team, what the innovators like yourself, what the patients, what collaborations with ONC and the government we've had, because we were the concept for the 21st Century's Cures Act. Gil, this has been a heavy, heavy lift. And society gets the credit.
I was wondering, though, you get some credit also, Ardy, but I was wondering, this is sort of your health passport. And the reality is, in our fragmented health ecosystem, where a lot of people are walking into walk-in clinics today, they say, this is bothering me. They call up a few clinics, who has the least amount of weight, and they go there for their rash, their knee pain, and so forth. And those places, serve a purpose, but they're very service or customer oriented. I mean, they're putting the customer at the center, the patient, and they're saying, oh, that rash, corticosteroid cream. They have no idea of the patient's total health. And so they may be treating the patient in a certain way that might be counterintuitive to what the patient really needs in the bigger picture. SEQSTER today, SEQSTER tomorrow. I mean, my experience was that, heaven forbid I would need to go, inpatient. I would probably find a way to share my SEQSTER record with or have my caregiver, my wife, share the SEQSTER record with the intensivist in the ER department to say, here's his complete health history, so that they could at least scroll this. I'd be curious. We're in the center of all this at SEQSTER, and systems that will develop like this. Are you indirectly bypassing the challenge of interoperability? Are you saying the system is fragmented? Guess what, consumer? You don't have to play by that rule. You can integrate. If the system isn't working for you, do something that works for you. Integrate your data. Stay alive. You may have hidden gems in your history that a doctor who needs to treat you needs to access this very quickly. Or even you want to participate in that drug development trial for that company. You want to see if you qualify. Bring this. This is going to help them determine in a flash if you're suited for that drug trial or not before they begin their sort of protocol-like tests. What's your image here? I mean, you've created an amazing platform. You've said, we don't have to fix the interoperability problem. We'll just bypass it. We'll put the consumer in the center. Where do you think this is going to go next?
Gil, I got to give it up. I don't say this often. I think you're the first person in my 7.5 years journey, and this is number 60th podcast, radio show, whatever we want to talk about, that we always talk about this kind of sort of stuff. But the first person ever to actually articulate it in a way of, wait, the person, the patient is just bypassing the systems because you guys created a technology for me as the patient that can be in control and bypass it. That is actually correct. Now, the use cases fall into three buckets, and you mentioned some of those. So one, when we started out in 2016, we created this for the patient, for the caregiver, and you experienced it. Thousands of people have experienced the same thing. We have both mobile as well as desktop, because on desktop, you could see your longitudinal health record actually a lot better. So I encourage you to, look at it on the desktop, since now you have, an account on mobile, since you showed me right before we got on this amazing radio show of yours with Greg, your mobile accounts. But if we didn't start with the consumer and the patient first, we wouldn't have been able to create an operating system. When I met Bill Gates, and he was very interested in this because of my Alzheimer's personal story, and he had a personal story, and he read, in the news that we had something going on interoperability, and we got funding from Bill Gates to Boston University to build out the research portal for SEQSTER, not just the patient portal that you and Dr. Eric Topol and lots of great people have experienced. Then we realized, oh my God, yeah, we have an operating system. This isn't a platform. So how do you make a business out of this? Because, Gil and others should never have to pay for their own data. We never believe that. But at the end of the day, you have to keep your lights on as a startup. You got to keep your lights on if you want to really create innovation and have execution on innovation. So we quickly pivoted to a B2B2C model where pharma companies, payers, providers, what I call the 3 Ps of healthcare, not just the 3 Ps in marketing, but the 3 Ps of healthcare, we're always looking to seek health data. And SEQSTER was kind of ahead of its time with even the name, because if you're a SEQSTER, that means you are seeking, SEEKING, health data. And I believed at that time when we founded the company early on that everyone is seeking health data. Even my own family has been saved. My own father, we ran a tumor board in 6 hours, and we were able to get it to, care coordination and get him in the surgery in days instead of weeks. And he was able to, celebrate his birthday in the south of France. It's incredible.
It's so gratifying when you can see it up close and personal around your family table, your breakfast table. I was just thinking I'm going to add 2 more Ps to your 3 Ps, where you talked about the patient, the payer, and the provider. And then you talked about how pharma companies, they're product innovators. That's a 4th P. And a 5th P you actually talked about as well, which is your work with ONC, which are policymakers. So you're working with 5 Ps. You're actually integrating the fragmented system of 5 Ps, not 3 Ps. And you're the ally to all 5 Ps. Now, I'm also wondering in the future, I hope that you're going to be leaning in that direction and talking about this. But, when we had the opportunity to speak with Dr. Thomas Mason, who is the Chief Medical Officer of ONC, of course, at HHS, Health and Human Services, and the Office of the National Coordinator focusing on Health IT, of course. And he was so enamored with the work that you and SEQSTER are doing, obviously very supportive. I'm sometimes wondering, is it possible to make the hard simple? And instead of getting all these systems who don't want to necessarily work together and not trying to sort of, can we reconfigure Epic? Maybe the solution is not to reconfigure, but just to find an integrator and, sort of find a more harmonious, collaborative way to do that. Obviously, you've done that. So my question to you is, when you take a look at what you've achieved so far, it's hard to swallow an elephant whole. The U.S. health system is 20% of our GDP. It's the most complex, the most expensive, the most fragmented of modern health systems that we know of. You provide a very simple fix. You can't fix it all at one time. Is there a target or 2 that you and the SEQSTER team are focusing in on, where you say, you know what, we're going to focus on these 2 pillars of our business right now because it makes sense, we can bring them aboard. If we bring those two aboard, we can bring this other one aboard and this other one aboard. But first, we're going to start here. What's the start here part for you?
Well, every time I get with you, I always learn something. And this is why I love spending time with you. And you're right. The 3 Ps from pharma to payer to provider. Now with SEQSTER, definitely hit on also policy and the patient. I love it. From this day and moment forward, we are going to brand it together as 5 Ps. And this is what collaboration is, and it's amazing. So I want to thank you for that because I just learned something amazing.
You and I had 30 minutes on stage together. Here we have 26 minutes because obviously Greg is guiding the show and he does such a great job. I want to ask you sort of a final, sort of a sentence or two wrap up. What's next on the SEQSTER horizon with health information as medicine? If you're going to say, hey, Gil, you're going to have me back on Health Unabashed really soon because I'm going to do X, and you and the listeners are going to want to hear all about that. What is that secret X that you can kind of give us a scoop about?
I'll do that. I have something actually pretty amazing to share. So, we were backed by pharma, particularly to begin with Takeda Pharmaceuticals after they bought Shire for $61 billion. The first investment was SEQSTER because, our idea and platform at the time was number one on their list. We're super thankful to Takeda and all the great work that they've done with McKinsey, Deloitte, Accenture, and a lot of the different management consulting groups to build SEQSTER to what it is for the pharma sector. But what I'm most excited about is the fact that it hasn't been announced, but we just signed a multi-year deal with a Fortune 10 company that could really change healthcare for better of people. And pharma is great. Clinical trials is great. We're doing a lot of work there because of the early investments that came in with SEQSTER and what was been built out there as a white label. But Gil, I can't tell you how excited I am about bringing millions, tens of millions of data points from claims data and mixing it with all of the EMR data that we have access to. And we have access to 99.6% of the healthcare system in the United States.
Whoa.
Health data is medicine.
All right. This is big news.
Thanks so much. It was great being here.
You heard it here, folks, from Ardy, Arianpour, founder and CEO of SEQSTER, breakthrough news and health information. Ardy, to quote you, information is medicine. You got it. Thank you for being on Health Unabashed.
And that is a wrap for today's broadcast. We want to thank our listeners for tuning in and our special guest, Ardy Arianpour, CEO and co-founder of SEQSTER, a leading healthcare technology company that puts the patient at the center of all their health data. Follow Ardy's work on Twitter via @SEQSTER, that's SEQSTER, and on the web via www.seqster.com. You can learn more about Health Unabashed on the program page at Healthcare Now Radio. We stream live weekdays at 10:30 a.m., 6:30 p.m., and 2:30 a.m. Eastern, or 7:30 a.m., 3:30 p.m., and 11:30 p.m. Pacific. Do keep the conversation going with Gil and me on Twitter by connecting with us via @Gil_Bash, and that's BASHE, and Greg Masters, MPH, and that's Greg with 2 G's. And do remember to tag your tweets with #HealthUnabashed. Until next time, stay unapologetically passionate about improving health.